We're just going to have the room open now with a couple of people streaming in. So we will make a start on tonight's financial wellbeing workshop. So kia ora everybody and welcome. We're here tonight with ASB for the final part in our 3-part series on financial wellbeing. We're giving you the space to talk about financial wellbeing, what opportunities there are to improve it, and giving you an opportunity to ask some questions with some of the amazing team at ASB. Coming to you from Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and want to acknowledge Waikato Tainui as mana whenua and Kingi tu Heitia. My name is Gemma and I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Waikato. I use she, her pronouns and facilitating the conversation tonight. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording this session. And so if you would rather not have your face or name recorded for this workshop, we encourage you to edit your name now in Zoom or turn off your camera. If you would love to stay engaged, that would be awesome. So please do turn on your camera if you're happy to be recorded. Tonight we also have our head of digital strategies, Louise, who also uses she, her pronouns and is here to moderate our questions. So we really encourage you to unmute and ask questions and share your different experiences tonight. If that's something that's way too out of your comfort zone, please do message Louise with your questions and she can share them on your behalf. Okay, so to tonight's workshop, we're going to have a poll popping up soon if it hasn't popped up already for you to make some choices in. And then we are going to introduce the amazing people at ASB. So I'm going to hand over to you, Po, to introduce yourself and we'll popcorn around.
Thanks, Gemma. Hi guys, I'm Po. I'm also a Hamilton born and raised Hamiltonian, and I've moved up to Auckland for the job with ASB. And yeah, I'm really excited today to be here to help talk to you guys in regards to different topics tonight and share some stories. So I'll pass over to Tarah. It's just down this way.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarah and I also work at ASB. I'm a compliance analyst, so I just make sure that ASB is compliant with all of our different regulatory and legal obligations. I'm really excited here to share some of what I know about being young and finances and dealing with them. So really happy to be here. Nice to meet you all virtually. And I'll pass it over to James.
Kia ora all. My name's James. I use him, he, him pronouns, and I've been a part of ASB now for 19 years. I'm currently a manager at one of our advice centres or branches. And I'm really excited to join this facilitation tonight because I really love just helping people get to where they want to go. So it's going to be really exciting to see what comes from tonight. I'm not sure who I'm passing to now, sorry. But
I think we're going straight into some KiwiSaver topics there, James.
Okay. Fantastic. Oh, sorry, I just lost my phone. So yeah, I understand that the top poll result was around investments, and we had so in the poll there was a lot of interest in shares, followed by KiwiSaver, and general savings is also strong as well. So yeah, like obviously, if we're looking at financial well-being, investing your money is super important part of that. And like the poll suggests, there are all sorts of different ways that you can build investments and build your wealth and build your financial well-being. So I'll be really keen to engage with anyone that's willing to engage with me tonight, just to understand a little bit about what are some of your questions that you might have around shares, around KiwiSaver, around general savings, so then I can really add some value. So if anyone's keen to ask a question either on the call or in the chat, then please do so, because that will really help to ensure, as I say, this is adding some form of value. But the big thing around investments and around your financial well-being is you don't have to start big. It's all about just building good habits in your life and in your financial life. And that can tie in really closely to mental and emotional well-being. And if you have those good habits in your mental and emotional and financial well-being, then it's also a lot easier to then start making good choices around your physical well-being. They're all really closely linked together. And so the key is just to start small with what you can, with what you've got, even if it's just little amounts regularly that you're putting away into a savings account or putting into things like KiwiSaver. There are all sorts of great ways out there that you can also build into things like shares, where you don't necessarily have to have huge amounts of money to be able to do that. There are all sorts of providers out there that let you start with small amounts and build from that. So yeah, is there anyone that's got any particular questions that I could perhaps try and answer, or should I tell a little bit of a story around savings, or I'm not sure what would be useful for people?
Oh, we love a story if you've got a story. And that
Love
might,
a story.
that might give some people some time to formulate a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we think about financial well-being and savings or investments in particular, my wife's in the background, so hopefully she won't mind me sharing this story. But when I first met her, she didn't have a lot of experience in terms of actually just putting money away in savings. A lot of it got spent. And what my experience in life in working with customers is so many people are like that. They can look at the end of the fortnight or week or month and go, where's all my money gone? And so what I was able to do is help understand what some of the goals were that she wanted to achieve, like paying off a student loan and saving some money for some travel, or saving for a first home. And so what we did together was we put a bit of a plan in place in terms of, okay, well, if you want to achieve those things, let's just start by chipping away at them slowly. And if we did this and this, it means you are spending a little bit less money right now, but you're actually going to be able to get towards some of those goals. And so she was really happy with what she could achieve over even a short space of time, just by being really intentional with her money. And even though there was a bit of short-term pain in terms of just not feeling like she had the same ability to spend right up front, we were able to help her pay off her student loan and save for some travel and ultimately for our first home, using things like KiwiSaver, using savings accounts, and just having a bit of a plan around the finances, which worked really well. So it wasn't necessarily easy for her at first, but when she saw the benefits of being able to do that, she totally just sort of bought into it, and she did super well. So yeah, hopefully that encourages some other people that are working towards that, or haven't quite started that, or is finding it difficult. Yeah.
Can I ask, that's amazing, can I ask what the habits were that your wife started or created that supported her to work towards some of those longer term goals?
Yeah, sure. So great question. So part of it was just setting a bit of a budget, which is super helpful, just to know what is coming in, what has to go out, and then what is the discretionary portion of what's left over, or at least what's the discretionary portion of what you're earning. And then just making a bit of a plan and going, okay, well, I'll allocate that much to some savings for like a trip or for some new shoes eventually or whatever. And then a certain portion will go to KiwiSaver, and just having that awareness, and then being quite intentional about splitting the money that way, and then trying to make sure that became a regular thing whenever she got paid, not just once and then leave it. And sometimes that took a little bit of encouragement from me, just to keep going. But yeah, most of the time it was just once she had a bit of that plan and she sort of saw how it was going to work, she was just really good at sticking to it. And then she was really, really happy when she got the letter from IRD to say that her student loan was all paid. That was like massive celebration. And so it was really important that we actually had some money aside so that when that happened, we were able to celebrate that milestone and stuff like that as well. So you can still spend a bit while you're trying to achieve these habits as well. It's not like all or nothing.
I have a really quick question. I know when I put money into my short-term savings, it might sound really silly, but I like round up the number so that what I put in my savings is all the odd numbers, and then I have a nice figure left in my like income account. Do you have a better way of doing it than that? Because that to me sometimes seems a bit silly, but it's kind of like my way of being like, that's how much I'm going to give is whatever that kind of odd number is. Is there a better way of like thinking about what that number should be going into my savings?
That's a great question. And like, I love that concept, and you'll be surprised like how many people actually do things like that. But I don't know about a better way, but maybe a different way is if you think about any income that you've got in terms of percentages. So a lot of people work on a sort of a 80, 10-10 type principle. So 10% is money that you're going to kind of be generous with or give to social justice type things. Another 10% is to savings, and then the other 80% is what you've got to spend on your discretionary stuff and your bills and stuff like that. So if the amount you've got coming in kind of changes, if you're using that percentage type basis, then that can also work quite well to just keep you on track. Yeah, so I don't know if hopefully that answers the question a little.
Oh yeah, I have another question from the floor.
Yeah.
So how do you know where you should invest with so many options out there? Savings, homes, shares, etc. When is one a better option?
Yeah, look, and that's a tough question to ask in just a few minutes in this sort of forum. But really, you want your savings to tie in with whatever goals you have set for yourself. And so the first thing you should really be thinking about is, what do I actually want to achieve? Because not only will that help you determine what is going to be right for you, but it's also going to help you stick to that plan as well. Because if you're saving for something exciting and cool, or something that's purposeful or meaningful, you're going to make more of those habit type, good habits or good choices to help you get there. If you haven't really got that belief and buy-in up front, then when other opportunities come along, it's just going to be super easy to pull that money out of that impulse savings account and stuff, or not save that week. So really, you want to try and identify what's going to be right for you, and then try and pair that savings or investments vehicle to that goal. And that's where maybe talking to your bank or a financial advisor, or going to like the Sorted website, Retirement Commissioner's website, can be super helpful.
Awesome. I'm going to read out some stuff from the public chat. Anna says, with regards to KiwiSaver, to have a conscious KiwiSaver versus, say, Generate, is it better to keep with my KiwiSaver and then find shares in more conscious shares?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of different providers do have KiwiSaver options that are socially conscious. Now, what you'd want to do is do some research into what that provider is offering with that, and to make sure that it does line up with your values. And if you do find one, then great, use it. It's better than not having some form of vehicle like that at all. But certainly, if you're wanting alternatives to a KiwiSaver provider, then yep, you do have the option of looking at using some other providers. And I'm trying hard not to sort of name names, because I don't want to just limit it to a particular provider. But just like, there are providers out there that let you get into things like shares and help understand how they work, and also choose the different companies that you want to invest in. So you can use those sorts of providers to help you determine what are companies that align with your values and that you want to support. So yeah, it does take a little bit of research sometimes, but.
Can I ask a question in regards to it? So say, for example, like I've been with Generate for a number of years, but then recently I've been looking more into like that mindful money kind of stuff that they've been doing, and there's like simplicity and other bits and pieces around. And I was just wondering whether it's better to actually transfer my KiwiSaver into one of those sort of accounts and have a KiwiSaver with that, or to keep it with Generate, and then also, like, because you can't open up two KiwiSavers, can you? So you would have to open up a shares account with them. Is that correct?
Yeah, and look, at the risk, we can't really sort of provide any personalized advice in terms of what you should do. But I mean, the benefits of sticking with KiwiSaver is that you can potentially be eligible for employer contributions and government contributions that you wouldn't receive if you stopped contributing to KiwiSaver.
But if it's still in a KiwiSaver,
yes,
even though theirs would be a KiwiSaver as well.
So you're right that you can't have more than one provider because you can only have one KiwiSaver account per person. So if you're looking for a different provider that's going to best suit you and your values and stuff like that, then you can switch between providers. But if you've got a KiwiSaver type vehicle and you are wanting to do additional stuff to that as well, then yes, you can certainly do that. But yeah, in short, you can't have more than one KiwiSaver provider. And yeah, I probably can't say too much more without sort of providing personalized advice, which is a bit
a different avenue. Is it that KiwiSaver has better tax benefits and stuff like that than, say, shares themselves?
Hard to say, and again, that could be sort of case by case basis, depending on what you're looking at doing. But and that's more of a maybe an accountant or the IRD could provide some guidance around that.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry to be a bit ambiguous.
No, that's all right. You're here for a free hour, not here to give financial advice. All good. Thank you.
Anna, I was actually wondering if you wanted to speak. Yeah, you left a really great comment in the chat which said, I do impulse saving rather than impulse spending. And it's had quite a few supportive comments. Do you want to speak to that a tiny bit?
Yeah,
what
sure.
Do you do?
So I got into impulse saving where I thought, like, because I've been overseas for so many years and I wanted to keep contributing to KiwiSaver, and so I would be like, oh, if I'm feeling like, oh, I want to do something, or like, sometimes you get this weird feeling like I want to spend some money. So my thought behind that is I want to spend some money. Oh, I'll go and impulse save. I'll go and add some more to my KiwiSaver, or I'll go and buy some shares. So yeah, that's kind of where I went with that. But it has actually benefited, because I think while I was overseas, I maybe impulse saved, like, every now and then, just put like a couple of, like, I'll go and impulse save 200 tonight. And big fun nights out when you're yachting.
Well, I guess it's similar to like buying a purchase, in that like you can't just get money out of your KiwiSaver. You can't sort of like return it and be like, oh no, I want that money back. It's like, oh no, it's there, bye. Like, see you when I buy my first house, or see you in retirement.
Yeah, because I spent so many years working at sea, and so a lot of the time you're not on land, and there is this weird feeling that we get as humans. I'm trying to be more mindful and more minimalist, but when you buy shares and when you invest in yourself, you either invest in yourself to learn something or invest in yourself to save more. So
awesome, thank you for sharing.
No worries.
I have another question in the chat from Kate. As a student, what do you recommend is the best deduction percentage for your KiwiSaver?
Yeah, so again, great question. Not one that I can determine for you, because that's something you have to try and determine for yourself, really. There are different percentages that you can actually apply or sort of save through KiwiSaver. So you can save 3, 4, 6, 8, 10% of your income. And I guess what you could do is contact your KiwiSaver provider and just chat through with them, like what would the benefits be to you if you did save a bit more, and what would it actually mean for you in terms of dollars every week or fortnight or month when you put that money away, just so you can determine if that's going to be right for you. But ultimately, the more you can save, the better off you're going to be later, either for your first home or for your retirement. So yeah, whatever you can do, it's going to make a big difference for you, and just a little amount now can add up to big savings later. But understand, as a student, it could be super tough to try and find that balance. So
I do know from personal experience that you can also get a KiwiSaver holiday as a student, which means for like 5 years you don't have to make KiwiSaver contributions, which is what I did as a student, which does mean I have a very small KiwiSaver, but if you're struggling, that's an option if you just need to keep that cash.
yeah, if you talk to, so just to quickly finish that point, if you do talk to your provider and you do qualify for that KiwiSaver contribution holiday, you can still then just put in impulse savings into it. So it's just that you're not doing the regular amount. So if you're finding it tough week by week, but every now and then you have a bit extra, definitely impulse saving.
And you're still eligible for that one where if you put in the $1,000 by the date, the government gives you other stuff, other money. You're still eligible for that. I know I have very specific knowledge about money.
Yeah, so anything you do put towards your KiwiSaver, every dollar that you put in up to a certain amount, the government at the moment puts in 50 cents. So yeah, if you can, then everything will count towards that. So talk to your provider about what that means for you.
Cool. So I think we'll do another poll. How does that sound? Cool. I'm just fighting with Zoom. No, I don't want to start that poll. That's the wrong poll. Oh, let me change polls. Sorry, just gonna talk to myself while I do this. I thought it would be really cool to talk about resilience, because that's kind of what KiwiSaver or savings in general allow you to have. So there is a nice poll up, hopefully, for you to vote on. What would financial resilience look like to you? Cool. 3 people, 4 people, 5 people voted. Cool, my figures have stopped jumping around, so I'm gonna share results. So we are at top 2 results are being debt-free and knowing what my options are if I have a rainy day need. So I'm wondering if you want to speak a little bit to that, ASB team.
Thanks, Louise. So I have the pleasure of talking about financial resilience. And so to answer the poll, it's pretty much all 3 of the first options, in the sense of being debt-free, understanding what you might have for your rainy day account, as well as considering insurance. And so in that element, it's all about being prepared for the unexpected events and having that confidence to be able to say, oh yeah, that's okay. If something was to happen, an event or something of a change, that you feel confident enough to deal with it. So it's all about just making sure that you're sorted for those emergencies and rainy days when things don't go as you expected it to. So at a high level, generally speaking, you try and make sure that first off, your cash flow works. So as James mentioned before, your income is greater than your expenses. You work towards some sort of 80-10-10 or the other sorts of ways of budgeting, so that you know that what you're planning to use your money for on a paycheck by paycheck perspective still gives you some discretionary income that you can choose to pay yourself first on. So if you plan to save X% in a year, it's useful to break that down and go, how much does that mean every paycheck, for example, and try and figure that out so that you're paying yourself first. And then working out what you need to do with your expenses, trading off different things like, making sure you do some impulse savings and making sure that you we'll work out the differences of life and what you want to spend on, so that you can go and still live the life you want to live, but at the same time know that you're on track for your goal in the next year, for example. So that's probably, I suppose, key element number one, making sure that you have the right cash flow going on and your income is better than your expenses. You are able to have some discretionary savings. And then you're also thinking about, paying off any debt if you have debt, like high interest loans and personal loans and credit cards. That way you can actually manage any debt that you might have and keep on top of all of that. And then thinking about how you, I suppose, manage those unexpected rainy day things. So as a rule of thumb, we say that you should probably aim for about $2,000 of emergency funds. And that's really useful just to be keeping something aside. And you don't have to have $2,000 straight away. It's, starting small and just gradually adding to that bucket, so that over time you have something on the side to know that if something unexpected does happen, you don't feel concerned. You're not going, oh my goodness, do I have the cash available, and all sorts, because that is quite nerve-wracking. And from your own, financial well-being, your stress levels, you don't want to be having to deal with that at the same time. So thinking about that is really useful. And I suppose habits you can think about when doing that is to identify those expenditures for the last 12 months that are likely to happen again. So any medical expenses you might have, car bills, insurance, general savings, things that you plan to do every 12 months sort of thing. If you plan a trip to the South Island every year, then that's something you save for every year, if that's what you do. In my case, a great unexpected expense for me was when my cat needed surgery. And so it was very unexpected. He was absolutely fine for all the time that we've had him. And then the 1 week he decided to change his behavior, we needed to take him to the vet, and that cost us $500 on that day. And I was like, oh golly. But luckily we had some emergency expenses, and that was really useful, because as a result of that, we were able to sort him out, and he's still alive as a result of it, which is awesome. And then on top of that, we got told that he needed to have a consistent vet diet. So instead of having a $20 weekly bill for food, let's just say that tripled in size. And so making sure that you consciously think of those sorts of things as well when spending changes.
Speaking of insurance, I assume you probably have pet insurance now. I will just launch a nice poll about insurance that I've figured out how to make work. Because I think that's the other half of rainy day stuff, is whether you have cash savings in your bank account or whether you have insurance to cover your butt in other ways. Well, hello, we're getting some votes. Someone has insurance for everything. Good job. It's not me. I can't vote on this. Cool. I'm going to call that voted. 57% said yes for something. So I'm wondering in the chat, do we want to talk about maybe what we have got insurance for, or maybe what we're not sure if we should get different types? I see Anna says, at what point should you honestly be getting life insurance? Great question. ASB?
I think that's back to me. I think, well, if I start with that question, again, that life insurance question is kind of like, do I need to have KiwiSaver? It's quite a personal question. Typically, people that find that life insurance is a good option for them is people when you've got some debt and if you pass away, you don't want to leave that to people. Or if you've got a family that you want to look after if you weren't around anymore. So, that's if you want to look after your parents, if you've got a significant other or a sibling, or you've got children. So those are the times that typically people really see the need for life insurance generally. A lot of young people, I find, typically don't really see the need for life insurance because they're young and fit and healthy. But yeah, so that's hopefully that kind of answers the question around the generalities of when people like to take that cover.
Ooh, Anna's now asked about health insurance, and I was going to ask about health insurance, so that's very good. Do you think that you need health insurance in New Zealand because we have a relatively publicly funded health system?
Yeah, great question. We do have a public system that is really good for 80% of all of the needs that we have. I guess I can share something here is that I've actually got, I could answer that poll with, yes, I've got insurance for like everything. But I've got a young family, and so we are heavily reliant on my wife and myself to be able to work and earn to pay our mortgage and provide for our boys and stuff like that. And my wife is actually a doctor, medical doctor. And even though we've got a few hookups in that community, we've still got health insurance because as great as our publicly funded system is, there are still gaps. Like our funding in New Zealand can only cover certain amount of cancer treatments and specialist consultants and stuff like that. And with our oldest boy is actually, we've just recently been referred to a private pediatrician for something that we're working on with him, because we don't want to wait ages and ages to get him seen through the hospital system. And it's an issue that, while it's not life-threatening, it is impacting his mental health and his emotional health, and therefore our mental and emotional health. And so the fact we've got health insurance means that we can actually get him sorted, get him seen, and hopefully we can get him fixed really quickly. But I've also seen family members and customers that haven't had access to the cancer treatments that they would have liked, and having access to the health insurance has meant for some of them they've been able to go overseas and get treatment and have choice over what they can get to get well faster. And there have been others that have just had to wait through the public system and wait, and potentially their outcomes haven't been as optimal as others. So while we have got a great system, there is certainly room for, if you've got the ability to choose that decision, then seriously look into it, because you may just find yourself in a situation where that will be super helpful. Yeah.
Cool. We have a question from Kate, which was in between Anna's, so I missed it the first time. Sorry, Kate. But is there any sort of insurance a student should consider having? Which is a great, important question.
Yeah, so obviously life as a student, we know, can be tough. Like budgeting can be tough, and just you're making all these life choices and stuff like that. You have to balance a lot of these things. I guess if you are not living at home, one thing I'd seriously suggest you consider is just having even just a basic, what we call contents insurance. Because if you're staying in someone else's place, if you cause any damage to that place, even if it's accidental, you might find that they or their insurance company will chase you up to pay back for any damages. We've seen issues, particularly in places like Dunedin, where there's lots of students and they have parties and things like that. And some people can be left with big bills if there's damage done to their where they're renting and staying. It could be as simple as you accidentally leave a heater on or something and it causes a fire, or you're cooking and it causes some damage or whatever. Contents insurance gives you liability protection. So in a lot of cases it does. So it just means that if you cause damage to someone else's property, you've got you can claim on that, and that insurance can pay back for that rather than you having to pay it back in installments for the rest of your life. So that's one thing that we'd definitely recommend you consider where you can. Hopefully that helps.
I know when I was a student, there were a lot of burglaries of student flats, and
yeah, totally.
having contents insurance meant that, like, if your laptop got nicked, you could at least replace it. Yeah, but it does mean you have to make sure all your flatmates lock the doors and don't leave the door unlocked, because you're not covered for contents if your house is unlocked. which is
Yes.
great flat building exercise.
I also
Tarah?
had like car insurance because I'm a bit clumsy when it comes to driving, and especially when I was younger, going on those road trips a lot. So, yeah, that saved me a lot. Lots of scratches and bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, third party is like so good.
Yeah.
Melissa says, I am a sole trader. I feel that I am living from invoice to invoice. Like, oof, I know that life. Due to AX, not sure what AX is, and GST overheads, tax. Due to tax and GST overheads, etc. How do I manage and set goals as a sole trader? I can definitely talk to that as a sole trader, but you guys are the experts, so you go
I'll
first.
go for it. I mean, if you've got some personal insight, then I'm sure that will be just as helpful.
Well, I've been a sole trader for about 5-6 years, and I have a beautiful, wonderful accountant that I adore. She is the best person in my life, apart from my partner and my mother. But I really love my accountant because she like sits down with me and we work out what my ratios are. So I know that my expenses are about 10% of my yearly income. So I always keep 10% of my invoice in my account to pay for those things. I then end up paying about 35% in income tax, KiwiSaver, and student loan repayments. So I put, what did I say, 25%? 25% into my savings account and my business account. And then I know that that 65% I can pay myself. So I have those very strict ratios that I pay myself from each invoice so that I am paying my overheads and making sure that I've got my tax sorted so that I can give myself sort of the full amount that I'm kind of allowed. But yeah, it's really tough being a sole trader and kind of needing to keep your next contract going. It's a lot of making sure that you have work lined up. And I think for a lot of people, they don't understand that being a contractor is like marketing all the time. You know, talking to people, hi, I do this. If you need any work done, my next contract's ending here. But I don't know if you have a website or anything, but I know there's some really cool things you can do with websites if you're marketing yourself and saying like, you can get calendar plugins that say like I'm next available from this date, which is kind of a cool way of like telling people who might be interested in working with you that like, hire me here, pay me money. But yeah. Anna says I use Acuity. Thank you for helping me with that. But yeah, I'm not sure if that helps you. Write more in the chat if you have specific questions. Oh, you're welcome.
There you
Yeah.
go. If I can jump in there for Melissa as well, I think there's a couple of things that I think are obviously as a sole trader, if you're not getting regular invoices, like if you don't have that regular work, then it can be certainly really tough. I love that idea of just putting that money aside in the expectation that those expenses are coming up. That's a great idea. I think, coming back to what we kind of started the conversation with is having some form of a budget. If you don't already, like hopefully you do, but if you don't, or if it's quite basic, then maybe just try and firm that up a little bit so you know exactly what you need to be spending the money on and what you can. Because budgets can also help you to understand what could I just hold off on paying right now, just so I've got a little bit extra security until my next invoice or things like that. But your bank may also be able to provide you with some cash flow tools that might help you if there are peaks and troughs and things like that. So have a chat to them because they might be able to provide ways that you can pay people that you need to pay and to give yourself a little bit extra time until you are receiving money in and things like that. They may also be able to provide you different ways for customers to pay you so that it makes it a bit easier to actually get the money off your customers, which may help with your cash flow as well. So hopefully some of those things help.
And I did want to say, I hope Gemma won't tell me off for doing this, but I have a Facebook group called Feminist Freelancers Club, and it's just for people who are vaguely feminist who want to talk about life as a sole trader. So you're welcome to join that. It's just a Facebook group. You just have to say you're not a jerk to join. That's basically it.
Sounds cool.
But, yeah. There are lots of really other cool women in sole trader, contractor kind of groups out there to ask for help as well. So definitely don't be afraid to kind of ask more widely than just the Zoom call. But yeah, cool. Do we have any other questions that we can answer for people? I'm just aware we've got kind of 15 minutes, and I could put up another poll, or we could answer specific things if anyone has any things that we haven't covered yet, or you want to jump back to something that we didn't answer as in depth. I'll leave the chat for a minute. Oh, no one's furiously typing that I can see, so I'm gonna give you all another poll. So we talked a little bit about how setting goals, especially James at the start, how goals can be really important. So I have a nice poll for you about goals. Have you ever set and reached a financial goal in the past? Whoa, people have set and met financial goals. But also lots of people haven't. Okay, cool. We've got quite a mixed bunch. Okay, I'm going to end polling. Share results. So we've got 57% said yes, set and met goal. Awesome, incredible. But 43% have said no, haven't ever set a financial goal. So I'm going to hand it over to ASB, who had someone to talk about this.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this, about meeting financial goals. I'm a big believer in life still being fun and planning things around our finances. We shouldn't let them, debilitate us, but let them empower us. So how can we, set goals financially, meet them? Everyone today has talked about the importance of why we need to do that in terms of financial resilience, but also like for big moments in life. I had a story I wanted to share of a friend who her and her wonderful partner got engaged, and they really wanted to get married, but their biggest goal wasn't to have a big fancy wedding. It was to buy a property together and live together. So they did that, and obviously with a heavy mortgage, with two quite young people, probably I think they were 25 or so when they got married, needing to meet their mortgage with jobs that weren't too high paying, kind of median income, but also wanted to have a wedding. So they decided, we're going to have a wedding and it's going to be beautiful, but we only can spend $5,000. Like, that's our capacity and that's all we can do. So what are some ways that we can budget for it, and how do we get creative? So, and that was their way of doing it. They're like, we're going to be creative. I ended up actually being one of the bridesmaids at her wedding, and honestly, it was the sweetest thing. I think so. Some of the tips that she did, and I thought that it would be good to share, and it doesn't have to be for a wedding, but any kind of party you're planning, or a graduation if you're a student, or just a fun midwinter Christmas party or something that you're doing, or a birthday. I think some of these tips we can all take away. Was first, venue wise, obviously that's the biggest cost for a wedding for a lot of people, and as soon as you say I'm getting married, I feel like a lot of vendors add what they call their wedding tax. So as soon as you say, I want this cake, but it's for a wedding, or I want this wedding, but it's for a wedding, then it suddenly becomes not just about hiring the venue, but hey, per head plus GST. So what they did was actually book out a beautiful park up here in Auckland, so Cornwall Park, if anyone's been there, and they have this beautiful band rotunda kind of gondola situation, and they managed to hire it for the whole afternoon for $20. It was actually incredible. Now I looked it up since, and it's actually gone up in price. So now it's $500 because I think people started catching on that it was such a beautiful wedding venue. So, you know, it has like this big kind of like pathway that you could walk down and treat as an aisle. And then they got married on the gondola and we were all standing in a circle, and it ended up being so beautiful. So I think finding a venue that you actually love, and it was cheap, it was a beautiful summer's day, and it worked out perfectly. What was cool about it as well was usually when you get a venue afterwards, when everyone's mingling, you have to like cater to their fancy canapes, which also costs a lot. But what she did, because it was in a park, she got a cool like ice cream truck to come. So we were all standing around with like scoops of ice cream, like chilling and taking photos. And her photos are so fun. And she brought like a couple of bean bags, and we were all kind of sitting around, and it was awesome. Like she had an ice cream truck, and we were all super happy, and it ended up being a really hot summer's day, about 28 degrees. So I mean, my makeup was sweating everywhere, and she got awesome photos in Cornwall Park. Some other things she did was afterwards we made our way to this bar just in Ponsonby, and everyone had to get their own rides there or Ubers, etc. But also because no one was drinking at Cornwall Park, it was actually quite easy to get there. What they did for their wedding car, also she really utilized our friend group. So one of our friends' dads had this beautiful like old car that, you know, she asked if, you know, to her friend, like, instead of you getting me a wedding gift, is it okay if I borrow your dad's car and use that? So, you know, utilizing your resources and what they have is really important. What was awesome about the bar, they did have a bit of a tab, so they did put some money aside. I think we were all allowed like 2 drinks, but then after that we had to pay for it ourselves. But because it wasn't a super fancy place that she had booked, the drinks weren't too expensive for people anyway. She also had a Polaroid camera that we all used to take photos that made great memories. She had one of our other friends take photos. What else did she do? She had her grandfather actually make a beautiful archway for them. And it's ended up being such a sweet gift that now she actually hires out to other brides and is making money out of. So it was a beautiful archway. And I remember fresh flowers, for example, cost a lot as well. So what she did, she went on AliExpress. And I remember going to her house when we were doing this together. She got some like fake flowers that are absolutely gorgeous. You wouldn't even tell. And we got a foam thing that you use when you go swimming, and we put the foam around the archway, and we like pinned and like hot glued these flowers onto it and had it drape it out. And it's so beautiful that, as I say, other brides actually still, you know, ask for their wedding and pay her a little sum of money. So now she's actually pregnant and is a stay-at-home mom now, so she kind of use that as an income stream. Not much, but it's still something, you know. And also, yeah, table settings, everything else she did herself. A bit of DIY, a bit of Airbnb goes a long way. Some tools that she used in terms of, obviously with all of this, you couldn't have a lot of guests. The more guests you have, the more expensive it is. So she had to cut down the guest list, become a little bit more brutal. I remember she had a spreadsheet that she was sticking to, because I think with things like a wedding or something that you're actually quite, you know, passionate about and emotionally tied to, you tend to, you know, be like, oh, what's another $5? What's another $20 per head? But if you have a spreadsheet and you're actually tracking what you're spending on, it's really important to do that and not go and think, you know, $5 per head when you have 50 or so guests adds up, actually. So she had a spreadsheet that she used. She also didn't get married in the peak wedding times, for example. So, you know, she did it quite later. I think it was end of April or maybe early May, which isn't quite peak wedding time. Usually I think that's around December to March, but it meant it was a little bit cheaper as well. What else can I think about? Also, for example, music. A lot of people pay a lot for bands or having a fancy DJ. What I found cool was she asked in terms of her invite if we could all add 2 songs that we really wanted on the playlist, and she added them all to her Spotify list that we had someone manage the whole night. And that meant I knew like my cool song would come on and I'll have one dance that I knew I really, really liked. So just being a little bit more creative can actually, you know, end up costing you a lot of money. Most weddings in New Zealand on average are about 30 to 40k, and she managed to do hers for 5k. and she has the most beautiful photos and the most wonderful memories. So that's my tips, and I know it's from someone else, but I think when I, for example, did a graduation party as well, I kind of did the same kind of things, found a really cheap venue, made little graduation cupcakes myself, decorated it all myself, got some cheap decorations from Trade Me and AliExpress, etc. You know, you don't, you know, sometimes even going to look shop can end up being quite expensive. You can buy things in bulk for a lot cheaper. So I think setting up a financial goal is really important, and then once you get to it, you actually feel really proud of yourself. I guess I can open it up to the audience and ask, is there something that you really want to do and are kind of struggling to find a way to make ends meet? And we can see if any one of us have ideas, or if anyone has any comments about cool party tricks that we can save money for.
I'm speechless. How many people were at the wedding?
I think about 50 to 70. I remember 20 people didn't come to the bar because it was like her older kind of grandparents and their friends. They didn't really want to come, but it was, yeah, the park was, you know, full of us just all like in fancy clothes. It was kind of cool.
That is absolutely incredible. We did ours really cheap, but that is like next level. I mean, we went out to Raglan and had fish and chips on the wharf and got married in a park as well. And then we had a separate event the next day, which was at the Hamilton Gardens, so people could BYO. My friend DJ'd. It was just like a little festival thing in an evening, but that is epic, and I'm so excited. My best friend's getting married, and I'm going to share so many tips with her from this, so thank you so much. It was such a cool story.
Yeah, I was so surprised when she told me. I was like, girl, like, you do want to save a little bit more? Are you sure you don't want it to be real special and fancy? But honestly, I think end of the day for a wedding, it's all about the memories. It's not, you know, no one remembers the gold where you had, etc. And I've been, you know, we went as part of her like bridesmaids group to all the wedding kind of shows at the fancy hotels, and they just stack up the price. If you want to sort of cheer, it's like plus GST, plus this. I remember like for a certain kind of fork, you had to pay per person GST. I was like, this is ridiculous. Honestly, no one's going to remember what they ate. Or
I think that it's like such a good example of prioritizing what is important to you and then allocating your finances accordingly, so that, you know, the most meaningful things to you are the things you spend that money on. And I used to work as a wedding photographer, and I always used to say to people, like, you're not going to remember like the table arrangement, you're not going to remember like exactly what someone said or wore or whatever, but you're going to remember those photos because they're going to be printed out on your wall for the next like however long you're married for. So I always used to recommend to people, that's the thing you should spend your money on, but I was very biased as a photographer.
Yeah, I actually do think she did have a photographer, but once again, her photographer, she booked her only for like 2 or 3 hours, not the whole day. And she was like, honestly, I want like 5 good photos of my husband and I and a group photo of all of our guests. Like, I don't need someone taking photos of everyone eating or every single second of the night, because to be honest, it's just going to go in a hard drive and I'm never going to look at it. You know, maybe with moon, but a few special photos of us I'll frame and have on our wall. So she had a photographer there, I think, honestly, at the park for like maybe 2 hours, and that didn't cost much.
Yeah, there's always ways of like working around it.
Yeah.
Cool. Anna says, unless you're obsessed over forks. Very true. You might be doing a wedding just for the forks, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, I can see we only have 2 minutes left. So unless anyone has any other questions, I think my big thing is don't let money debilitate you. Find ways around it, budget, save, and be creative. I think, and I know that Gemma mentioned this in our last talk as well, like not having that scarcity mindset, thinking, you know, there's enough for everybody and enough for me, but how can I just work around it? I think having that attitude actually just opens up so many doors without you even realizing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tarah. It's such an amazing note to finish up this series. And yeah, just mentioning again, this is the third part in our 3-part series with ASB, and we just want to say a massive thank you to the team at ASB for jumping on over the last 3 workshops and providing such epic stories and real tools for us to really improve our financial well-being. I think in reflecting back over the three workshops, I've just kind of reflected on my biggest takeaway from each one. Our first workshop was really diving into some of those tools around getting more self-awareness of where my money is, what is it doing, how can I start to get on top of where my money is. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from that first workshop, which you touched on tonight as well, James. Just the importance of getting that self-awareness so that we can make better choices. Our second workshop, I think what came through really strong in our feedback and what did stick really well, which is what you've just touched on, Tarah, again, is just the importance of our money stories and being aware of our money mindset when we are thinking about setting financial goals and making changes to our income or our budgets, and just being aware of what those stories are, writing them down, bringing awareness to them so that if that story or that belief actually doesn't support us to achieve our goals, that gives us an opportunity to write a new one and start almost reprogramming and retraining our minds to to set ourselves up for success when we start to make changes with our money. And then tonight, I'm sorry, but I just want to know how we can make impulse saving a thing. Like, how do we get that trending? That is so sick. And I've never heard of it like that. And I think you're so right, Anna, in terms of sometimes we just get these moments where we just want to spend money, and instead of, you know, acting on that, being really mindful of those financial goals and going, actually, I'm going to impulse save. And I think that's just so powerful and really links to some of the other things we've talked tonight around making financial goals a reality. And there's just been some awesome stories with really practical things that we've touched on that supported some thinking around that. So yeah, a massive thank you to the crew at ASB. Thanks to the young people who have jumped on tonight. It's been great to be able to have this conversation together, and we really hope that this has supported you in your financial wellbeing journey. We'll be sending out a survey after the event, so if you could please fill that out, give us some feedback, let us know what stuck, what your biggest takeaway is. That'd be fantastic. And I'll leave it there. Have a great night. See you later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.